I swear I didn't mean to look. The light hit her just right. That soft afternoon kind of glow that makes everything look warmer than it is. And before I could even catch myself, my eyes followed her movement. The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered on the concrete, loud enough to break whatever quiet rhythm the garage had going. She glanced over her shoulder, a teasing half-smile curling her lips as she said, "Like what you see?" It should have been a joke. It was a joke. But something about the way she said it, low, amused, completely unbothered, made it feel like more. I'm 26. I've worked at my uncle's auto shop for 3 years now. Most days it's just oil, metal, noise, and the smell of burnt rubber that follows you home no matter how many showers you take. But that day, the day she brought in her father's old Mustang, the whole place felt different. She wasn't supposed to stand out. People come in, they drop keys, complain about costs, and leave. She didn't complain. She leaned against the counter like she had nowhere better to be, her nails tapping a slow rhythm on the worn surface. Her voice had that calm authority, like someone used to being listened to. Mid-40s, maybe. The kind of woman who didn't chase youth because she didn't have to. Her name was Laura. Her father, the mechanic she mentioned with a laugh, had owned this very shop decades ago. She said she grew up here, sitting in the back office doing homework while engines roared around her. I'd never seen her before, but somehow it felt like she'd always been part of this place, like the walls still remembered her. I tried to keep things professional, asking about the car, what the issue was, all the usual. But every time she looked at me, I lost the thread of my own sentences. There was a steadiness in her eyes that made me nervous, not because she was judging, but because she saw too much. When I ducked under the hood, she didn't wait in the lobby like most customers. She wandered around the garage, tracing her fingers across the old tool drawers, smiling to herself. Dust caught in her hair. Sunlight slipped through the open doors and painted her shoulders gold. I told myself to focus, spark plugs, fuel line, not her, but she kept talking, her voice close even when she wasn't. "My dad used to say the car tells you what it needs," she said softly. "Guess that makes you fluent then." I replied before I could stop myself. She laughed, low and genuine, and it landed somewhere I couldn't shake. After a while, she crouched beside me, curious. The hem of her jacket brushed my arm. Just a small, passing thing, but it was enough. The scent of her perfume mixed with the oil and metal, something delicate cutting through all that roughness. She leaned in to look at the engine and then turned her head, catching me mid-glance. That's when she said it. "Like what you see?" But this time it wasn't just teasing. There was an edge to it, something both amused and daring, as if she wanted to see whether I'd look away. I didn't. For a second, neither of us spoke. There was only the hum of the overhead lights, the ticking metal, and the way her gaze lingered before she stood and brushed the dust from her jeans. She thanked me, said she'd come by tomorrow to see how the car was coming along. Her tone was casual, but it left something hanging in the air, like an unfinished sentence neither of us had the courage to complete. When she walked out, I found myself staring at the doorway long after she was gone, grease on my hands, heart running faster than it should. That night, I kept replaying her voice, that teasing question, over and over. Not the words themselves, but the way she looked at me when she said them. Like maybe, for a second, she'd seen something I didn't even know I was showing. The next morning, she was already there when I pulled up, sitting on the hood of her car, coffee cup in one hand, phone in the other. She looked out of place among the grease and noise, like someone who belonged somewhere quieter. "Morning," I said, trying not to sound as awake as I suddenly felt. She looked up and smiled, not the teasing kind this time, softer, distracted, maybe even tired. "Didn't mean to be early. I couldn't sleep." That threw me off more than it should have. She didn't seem like the type who said things like that out loud. I nodded, pretending to check the workbench for tools I didn't need. "No problem. You're keeping the car company." That made her laugh, small and real. The kind of laugh that cracked the air just enough to feel human again. I popped the hood, started explaining what I'd done, replaced a few hoses, cleaned out the carburetor. She listened, arms crossed, like someone trying to hold herself together more than keep warm. The longer I talked, the more I noticed the small things. The faint tremor in her hand when she lifted the cup, the half-moon scars on her knuckles that didn't match her manicured nails, the way her eyes drifted whenever I looked directly at her. At one point, a light breeze pushed a strand of her hair forward. She brushed it back, but her hand stayed there for a second longer than it needed to. Fingers pressed against her temple, like she was fighting off a thought. "You ever miss him?" I asked quietly, surprising both of us. Her brow furrowed. "My dad." I nodded. She exhaled slowly, eyes still on the car. "Every time something breaks." A faint smile, then a shake of her head. "He taught me how to fix things. Just not people." Something about the way she said it, calm, matter of fact, left a weight between us. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled before they reached my mouth. Instead, I handed her a rag. "Here," I said. "You can help. If you want." She hesitated, then took it. Her fingers brushed mine, just barely, and the moment stretched thin, fragile, dangerous. She crouched beside me, watching carefully as I showed her what to do. Our shoulders almost touched. She smelled faintly of citrus and rain, like she'd been outside before sunrise. I tried not to notice, but everything in me did. "Like this?" she asked, pressing her hand where mine had been seconds before. "Yeah," I murmured. "Just like that." She nodded, concentrating, a smudge of oil streaking her wrist. And when she caught me looking, she didn't tease this time. She just smiled faintly, tired, knowing, like she understood something I didn't dare say. We finished in silence. The car idled smooth and steady, a quiet heartbeat between us. She leaned against the fender, watching the exhaust curl into the air. "Guess it still runs," she said softly. "It does," I replied. "Better than before." Her eyes flicked toward me, just for a second, the kind of look that makes time stutter. Then she nodded, barely audible over the engine's hum. "Good," she said. "Then I guess I'll be back tomorrow." And before I could answer, she was gone again, leaving only the faint scent of her perfume and the echo of that soft, unguarded smile I knew I'd think about all night. It started raining halfway through the evening, the kind of steady, soaking rain that makes everything sound smaller. Most of the crew had gone home early, but I stayed behind to finish up the alignment on her Mustang. The storm made the garage hum, water tapping the metal roof, the smell of oil sharp in the air. She showed up just as I was wiping my hands. Her hair was damp, a few strands sticking to her cheek. "I figured you'd still be here," she said, stepping inside and shaking the rain from her jacket. "You don't strike me as the type who clocks out on time." I smiled faintly. "And you don't strike me as the type who waits for daylight." That made her pause, not offended, not amused either, just thinking. She walked closer, her boots echoing on the wet floor. The lights buzzed overhead, throwing a pale yellow glow over everything. She stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth from her coat. "It's quieter at night," she said. "Easier to think." "About what?" I asked. Her lips twitched. "About why I keep ending up here." I didn't have an answer for that, not one I could say out loud. So I nodded, looking at the car instead. "Maybe it's the Mustang," I said, trying for lightness. "Maybe," she whispered, though her tone said she didn't believe it either. We worked side by side for a while, not saying much. The storm outside filled the silence. Every time our hands brushed over the same tool, my chest tightened a little more. I could feel the space between us shrinking, like gravity itself was shifting. When I finally spoke, my voice came out lower than I meant. "You know, you don't have to come by this late. I can always call when it's done." "I know." She wiped her hands on a rag, eyes fixed on the floor. "But it's easier being here than anywhere else." That hit harder than it should have. I turned toward her, but before I could say anything, her phone buzzed. The sound snapped the moment in half. She hesitated before picking it up. The name lit up on her screen, Mark, and she frowned just slightly. "Sorry," she murmured, stepping aside. Her voice softened as she spoke, low enough that I couldn't hear the words. Whatever was said, it left her quiet. When she hung up, she didn't look at me right away. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded, too quickly. "Yeah, just complicated." I didn't push. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof. She leaned on the workbench, her fingers tracing a circle in the dust. You ever get tired of pretending everything's fine? She said finally. Every day, I admitted. That made her look at me. Really look. The kind of look that lasts too long, that makes your throat dry and your pulse unsteady. She took a slow breath. Sometimes I think you understand more than you should. I don't think that's possible, I said quietly. Something flickered in her eyes, something dangerous and tender at once. She stepped closer, the space between us now just a breath. The rain softened outside, leaving only the sound of her quiet breathing. For a second, I thought she might reach for me, or maybe I would. But then she blinked, stepped back, and said, almost in a whisper, "You should get some rest." Her coat brushed my arm as she passed, and I stood there, hands still trembling slightly, watching her leave again. When the door closed behind her, I let out the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which scared me more, the thought of seeing her again or not seeing her at all. She came by unannounced that night. No call, no reason, just headlights washing over the garage door and the sound of rain still clinging to her tires. I was sitting on the floor, back against the Mustang's bumper, pretending to work while mostly thinking about her. When she stepped inside, I didn't stand up. I just watched her from the corner of my eye. She looked different, not polished, not composed. Her hair was still damp from the drizzle, her jacket half-zipped like she'd left in a hurry. "You're still here," she said softly. "I could say the same," I murmured. She let out a tired laugh, then sat down across from me on the concrete, knees drawn in, arms resting loosely over them. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick, like the kind of quiet you get after an argument you haven't had yet. Finally, she said, "This isn't normal, is it?" I looked up. "What isn't?" "This," she said, gesturing between us. "You, me, whatever this thing is." Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion, the kind that comes when you're done lying to yourself. I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "You're too young to be wasting time like this. Waiting around for something that can't." "Who said I'm waiting?" I interrupted, a little too sharply. That made her look at me. Really look. Her eyes softened, and suddenly I regretted every word I'd just said. "You think I don't notice?" she said quietly. "The way you stop talking when I walk in. The way you look at me like you're trying to solve something." She shook her head. "I don't know what you're seeing, but whatever it is, it's not what you think." I swallowed hard. "Then tell me what it is." Her lips parted, but no words came. Just silence. The kind that says everything words can't. The sound of rain filled the space between us again. She was still looking at me, eyes glassy, as if she was trying to memorize something she'd have to forget later. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally. "But you are." That hung there, raw and dangerous. She exhaled, slow and shaky. "I keep telling myself it's just the car," she said, half smiling, half breaking. "That I come here because it reminds me of him. But that's not true anymore." The air felt thin. I could hear my own heartbeat. She pressed her palms against her knees, like she needed to ground herself. "You make me forget how old I am," she whispered. I wanted to tell her that I didn't care about that I never even noticed the years between us, but the look on her face stopped me. There was too much pain behind her words, too much truth to touch without breaking it. She stood, brushed off her hands, and said, barely above a breath, "We can't keep doing this." I looked up at her, unable to find a single thing to say that wouldn't sound wrong. Her voice cracked on the next sentence, fragile as glass. "I don't even know what this is anymore, but it's the only thing that feels real." She didn't show up for 3 days. By the 4th, I told myself to stop looking at the clock, stop glancing at the door every time I heard a car pull up outside. The Mustang sat there, fixed and silent, taking up more space than it should. I tried to focus on other work, but everything felt too quiet without her voice cutting through the hum of tools. When she finally walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller somehow. Not in size, in presence. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep. "Sorry," she said, setting her purse on the counter. "Didn't mean to vanish." I wiped my hands on a rag, keeping my tone steady. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I know," she said, "but I think I owe myself one." She didn't look at me right away. Instead, she wandered toward the car, running her fingers along the hood like she was trying to feel something through the metal. I found something, she said after a long pause. While cleaning out my dad's old house, she held up a small, oil-stained envelope. I recognized the handwriting instantly, the same faded scrawl on the old invoices pinned to the back wall of the office. I didn't open it until last night, she went on. It was addressed to me. He wrote it before he died. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, edges worn from being read too many times already. Her voice was quiet as she read. If anyone's still around to take care of the shop, maybe they'll remind you what real work feels like. You were always good with your hands, even when you didn't believe it. Don't run from the things that make you feel alive, Laura. They don't come twice. Her hand trembled as she folded the letter back up. I didn't understand it when I was younger. I do now. I swallowed hard, not trusting myself to speak. She looked up at me then, eyes rimmed red but steady. You remind me of him, she said quietly. Not how he looked, how he was. The way he cared about things. The way he noticed the small stuff everyone else ignored. I didn't know what to do with that. The weight of being compared to someone she loved, someone gone. I thought coming here would just help me remember him, she said, voice thin. But it's done the opposite. It's made me remember me. And that's what scares me. The room felt smaller suddenly. The sound of the rain gutter dripping outside filled every silence. She reached out, not to touch me, but to steady herself against the hood. Her voice softened. You should probably let me go after this. I don't want to make a habit out of running from things that feel right. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Just a low hum in my chest that felt too close to breaking. She took a breath, shaky but sure. My father used to say the car tells you what it needs, she murmured. I think people do too. We just don't listen soon enough. Then she smiled, small, painful, beautiful, and said the line that's been echoing in my head ever since. Don't wait for me to figure it out. I already know what this is. I'm just not brave enough yet. The day she came to pick up the car, the air felt heavy, the kind of stillness that comes before a goodbye you're not ready for. The rain had stopped, but everything still smelled like it. She parked a little crooked, left the door open, didn't seem to care. I was standing by the Mustang, pretending to go over a checklist that didn't exist. For a while, neither of us said anything. The silence wasn't awkward this time. It was something else, something that made words feel unnecessary. She walked around the car slowly, running her hand along the fresh paint, her touch light, almost reverent. You did good, she said finally. It feels like him again. I just followed his notes, I said. She smiled faintly. No, you listened to it. There's a difference. She stopped beside me, close enough that I could feel her warmth through her jacket. I didn't step away. Couldn't. I've been thinking, she said softly, eyes on the car. About everything. About you. I waited. The hum of the shop lights filled the space where her words faltered. When I was younger, she continued, I thought connection had to look a certain way. Someone your age, your world, your rhythm. And then you show up, and suddenly everything I thought I'd outgrown starts to feel new again. Her voice wavered, but she didn't look at me. You make me forget I'm supposed to have already figured it all out. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just stood there, close enough that the edge of her sleeve brushed mine every time she moved. Finally, I said, maybe figuring it out isn't the point. That made her glance up. There was something in her eyes, not confusion this time, but clarity, the kind that hurts a little. She reached out like she was about to adjust my collar, but her hand just rested there for a second. A small, grounding touch that said more than anything else could. I don't want to ruin this, she whispered. You won't. Her hand dropped, brushing against mine as it fell. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world outside felt far away, just the sound of the cooling engine and her quiet breathing beside me. I don't know what happens next, she said. Neither do I answered. Maybe we don't need to. That made her laugh, soft and trembling. She stepped closer then, just enough that her shoulder leaned against my arm. We stayed like that, two people who'd finally stopped pretending they weren't already tangled in something too real to name. No kiss, no confession, just stillness. Shared. Understood. The rain started again, faint against the roof. She tilted her head, eyes half closed, and said, almost to herself, "Feels like it's finally done." But she didn't move away, and I didn't either. We just stood there, letting the moment settle into something that didn't need words, something that, for the first time, felt enough. It's been 3 months since she left town. The Mustang's gone, too. Shipped off to some coastal place she said she might finally settle in. The spot it used to occupy in the garage still feels different, like a room that remembers its last conversation. I still come in early, still stay too late, but the silence isn't empty anymore. It's full of small echoes I've stopped trying to chase away. The sound of her laugh bouncing off the metal walls. The faint trace of her perfume buried in the old rags. Even the quiet feels alive in its own way now. People think love always ends in something loud, a confession, a heartbreak, a goodbye that tears through you. But what I learned from her is that it can also end like this, quietly, gently, almost with gratitude. She taught me that connection doesn't have to mean permanence. Sometimes it's just two lives brushing past each other long enough to remind both what it feels like to be seen. Before her, I thought love was something you built toward, a destination, a goal. But she made me realize it's more like tuning an old engine. Subtle, patient work, learning to listen to what hums beneath the noise. Sometimes it runs smoothly. Sometimes it doesn't. But when it does, even for a little while, it changes the way you hear everything after. I still remember our last night. She didn't say goodbye, not exactly. Just stood by the open door, lights spilling over her like a quiet farewell. "Don't wait for me," she said. "Just keep fixing things." I laughed then, thought she meant the cars. But I get it now. Because that's what I've been doing since. Fixing things that aren't broken enough to give up on. A door hinge here. A friendship I'd let rust. The small, unspoken pieces of my own life I hadn't touched because I was afraid of what I'd find. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine her walking into another shop somewhere. Different coast, different smell, same restless heartbeat. Maybe she still thinks about that letter from her father. Maybe she still thinks about the boy who looked at her like she was the first person to ever speak his language. And maybe she doesn't. That's okay too. Because she's the reason I finally understood that not everything that changes you is meant to stay. Some people just arrive to tune your heart, to help it remember how to sound when it's honest. If she ever comes back, the car will still be here. I'll still be here. But it won't be waiting this time. It'll just be ready. And maybe that's all love really is, readiness without expectation. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?